Good afternoon, Philanthropy Together. Welcome to our sanctuary at Glide Memorial Church. We are so happy to have been invited to be with you today. Right now, you're seeing the same view of Glide that people all over the world see every Sunday. My name is Malcolm Walter, and I'm the interim CEO at Glide. I'm here with members of the Glide Ensemble and the Change Band. They are a great example of how we bring together people through music to change the world. Music is a giving circle. It opens hearts and minds. It gives people permission to feel, and it vibrates hope into the world. Our mission at Glide is to create a radically inclusive, just and loving community mobilized to alleviate suffering and break the cycles of poverty and marginalization. Our work is rooted in data-based best practices, but even more importantly, the work of our hands is guided by our heart. The Glide Ensemble believes that music can help sustain us all as we live and love this work. Love is the answer. Glide believes that. So today, the Glide Ensemble chose a song that says just that. Love is the answer. As we align our mission with yours today, let's co-create new ways of philanthropy, where more people can be recognized for their gifts. And now, please enjoy the Glide Ensemble.
Hello, everybody out there. Listen, people. We need to straighten this world up. Yeah. Things are bad all over, and we're drinking from a bitter cup. But don't despair. God has a plan for us. Yes, God does. We gotta be strong and pray, love one another every day, cause
love is the answer.
I said love is
the answer.
False prophets, they're trying to lead the way. Your God is better than yours, so they say. But listen, people, let time pass you by. Oh no, we gotta be strong and pray, love one another every day, cause
love is the answer.
I said love
is the answer.
Come on, girl, we gotta
stop this cycle of death and destruction.
Destroy
Love
the
one
world.
another without perfection.
God is love.
God's waiting on us to love one another. Let the love of God be down on
Listen, people, we need to straighten this world up. Yeah. Things are bad all over, and we're drinking from a bitter cup. But don't despair. God has a plan for us. Yes, God does. We gotta be strong and pray, love one another every day, cause love
is the answer.
I said love.
Love is the answer.
Come on, we
We got to
gotta
stop this cycle of death and destruction. Love one another without perfection.
God is love.
God's waiting on us to love one another. Let the love of God be down on
Love is the answer.
Love is the answer.
Love is the answer.
Love is the answer.
I'm talking about love.
Love is the answer.
Hey, I'm talking about love, yeah.
Love is the answer.
Unconditional love, yeah.
Love is the answer.
Talking about love.
Love is the answer.
We
Oh my gosh. Thank you, Glide Ensemble, for that incredible performance. As you can see, my tech is going crazy. I must have caught like the Holy Ghost. I'm now like spirit right now. I don't know what's going on. But however, thank you all for joining today for this final session of the We Give Summit. It is called Seed Funding, the Next Big Ideas, Visions, and Organizations. Please note that closed captioning is available and can be enabled at the bottom of your screen. My name is Kaisen Bunthuong. My pronouns are Z, he, gender queer, Asian American with short brown, changing my hair color, short black hair, and a very bold patterned shirt to go along with our theme for the summit. I'm in front of a red background with the blue We Give Summit logo, and I'm the Director of Development at Philanthropy Together. So we would also love to know who is joining us at the finish line here of our summit. If you haven't done so, please introduce yourself in the chat. And we want to note that there's no live Q&A with this portion of the session, so please do enter your questions throughout the session in the chat as well. We also want to encourage you to fill out our 2-poll question feedback survey at the end. But with that, we also want to keep things fun. This is the last opportunity for you to win a book from one of our amazing We Give Summit speakers. So stick around to the very end to find out who that winner is, and we'll get in touch with you after to move that forward. So without further ado, it's my pleasure to introduce our moderator, Amrita Doshi.
Hi, everyone. Welcome to our final panel and session of the We Give Summit. My name is Amrita, and I'd love to invite the other panelists joining me to also get on camera, and then we'll start with our introductions. So firstly, I just wanted to give a huge thank you to the Philanthropy Together team, and specifically Kaisen. He really brought us all together and took an idea and really blossomed, beautifully blossomed it into what you're going to see today in this conversation. I'm particularly honored to moderate this because I've listened to the podcast, looked at the profiles of each of you and your organizations, and you're absolutely brilliant and passionate and just inspiring individuals. In lieu of traditional bios, we're going to do a quick go around, share our name, pronouns, organization, a visual description of ourselves, and then 1 to 2 lines of what brings you to this conversation personally or professionally. So I'll share first. My name is Amrita again. My pronouns are she, her. I'm here from South Asian SOAR. A little bit about me. I have an orange background with SOAR's logo behind me, long black hair. I'm Indian American woman. I think that's about it. I'm going to try to speak as little as possible so you can hear from our panelists. But one thing I wanted to share is what brings me to this conversation is that SOAR was seed funded about 1.5 years ago, and I'm honored to be sitting across our seed funders, the Ramesh and Kalpana Bhatia Family Foundation. And with that, I'll pass it to Anita.
Hi, everybody. Anita Bhatia here. I'm the Executive Director of the Ramesh and Kalpana Bhatia Family Foundation. My pronouns are she and her. I am Indian American with long flowing black hair and an orange sweater on with a green background and our foundation logo. Oh, and what brought me here was, as Amrita mentioned, our foundation was the seed funder for South Asian SOAR. And so I'm really excited to just talk about my experiences in funding new and innovative ideas.
And I'll just popcorn it to you, Amina, and then maybe Ev and Lili if you want to follow up after that.
Thanks, Amrita. Hello, everyone. Just so happy to be here and just feel totally graced by that amazing performance. So just thank you for that. Amina, Casewit, pronouns she, her, hers, Middle Eastern woman, brown hair, brown eyes with a white background, and the New Profit logo. So I am a lead partner for our portfolio investing at New Profit, a venture philanthropy fund based in Boston. And I'll just say on a very personal level, I come to this work with a personal passion about what it takes to achieve social justice and social impact across contexts. And that's really born from my experience as an immigrant and global citizen. And I'll popcorn it to Ev.
Thanks, Amina. Thanks, everyone. So good to be here. Yeah, I was glad my camera was off because I was dancing throughout that whole intro there. That was amazing. My name's Ev Boyle, he, him pronouns. I'm an investment principal at New Media Ventures. We invest in progressive power building organizations. Visual, I've got some bikes in the background. I'm a white guy. I've got a fresh haircut, fresh fade. My friend cut my hair yesterday. And I'm wearing an LA Ford shirt, which is one of my favorite local groups here in LA. What brought me to this work? I grew up, I was in college during the Bush years. So the sort of wars in Iraq and Afghanistan, all the sort of horrific stuff that was going on there really activated me and set me on a journey that I'm still on today. And love is the answer. So yeah, pass it off to Lili.
Thank you so much. My name is Lili Gangas. I'm the Chief Technology Community Officer at the Kapor Center. For folks who may not know what the Kapor Center is, specifically Kapor Foundation, we're a private operating foundation at the intersection of technology and racial justice. And so we do research, we fund programs, we do partnerships, as well as now doing more of the tech policy across the entire tech ecosystem, from K through 12 education all the way to entrepreneurship and venture capital. And my pronouns are she, her, hers. I'm a proud Latina. I have my hair tucked in the back. I'm wearing a black top with a white background. And on top of that, what would add as part of my identity as well that brought me here is that I'm also an immigrant, non-English speaking since I was a kid. And I think it's my lived journey that brought me to this work as somebody who was not supposed to be in a lot of these tech spaces, but I also saw the economic wealth that technology is bringing, but also a lot of the ethical decisions and a lot of the technology design and deployment and impact. So looking forward to sharing a little bit more about that and the world that we all have in this really digital world across the different areas of our life. So looking forward to sharing more with you all.
Thank you so much, all of you, for introducing yourselves. And I love that everyone is really rooted in both their personal journey, but also social justice, and naming that as such a core driver in what brings us to this conversation. For another moment of grounding, we're going to do another quick rapid round, just to start us off with some definitions. So I'll pass it to each of you. Maybe we can just go in the same order, and maybe briefly share what organizations or causes you tend to fund, either, again, personally or as an organization, and what stage. And maybe if you want to share a couple of words of what that means, just so we all know what your organizations are funding. So Anita, I'll pass it to you again.
Why do I have to be the first one? I want to hear everyone else's answers first, so then I can craft mine. So as I mentioned, we're a private family foundation. And I think what's been really interesting, and I won't go too much into it, but what's been interesting about our journey is that we started off very small, and then have really grown over the years. So that has, we've looked at giving differently over the years as well. We typically support our sort of pillars are mental health, education, neurodiversity, equality, equity, and women's health, as well as medical research. So those are sort of our large buckets. And yeah, that's what we support. Again, I don't want to take up too much time in the intro, but was there something else that you wanted me to answer? Okay, cool. I'll pass it on to Amina.
Great. So New Profit is a venture philanthropy organization, which means that we are a funder and a committed strategic partner to the social entrepreneurs that we support. And we have two main grant-making vehicles. We have one for early stage organizations that are about 2 years post-founding, roughly, and generally, between $250,000 and $2 million in budget. And then we have a later stage portfolio that's generally between $2 million and $15 million in budget. And we fund these organizations across 3 broad issue area buckets. So education, economic mobility, and democracy and civic engagement. And we're really looking for social entrepreneurs and organizations that are really centering proximity to the communities that they serve, really think about what that means in practice, and whose leadership is really intentional about that proximity, and also leaders and organizations who come with a systems orientation and really thinking about how do we not just create kind of incremental change in the communities that we're in, but also how might we shift the systems that are creating the challenges that our communities are facing in the first place. So with that, I'll give it next to Ev.
Yeah, thanks, Amina. Yeah, so New Media Ventures, we fund organizations that are building progressive power and doing it in some way that's innovative, I guess we say, so that it's often like media, technology, things like that. So we fund all different kinds of vehicles. We've done C3 and C4, which are different types of nonprofits, both sort of nonpartisan and explicitly partisan. We do for-profits, we funded B Corps, we funded some PACs. So we've got different vehicles to fund all sorts of organizations, and we do early stage. So generally seed stage, often I'd say about half the time we're the first 6-figure check that a group gets. So often they're starting up, they sort of have a couple folks on staff. So that's the stage we come in. And then, yeah, last thing, sort of like New Profit, we're really focused on systems change work too. And also funding leaders, that are proximate to the communities that they're serving and reaching, whether it's through media, tech, anything else. So that's us. I'll pass off to Lili.
I think we're all in the same space of funding systems change, which is what the Kapor Foundation has been focusing on. And the types of systems change that we're focused on is really, as I mentioned earlier, in the technology sector, right? So just the immense role and increasing role that technology has played in our everyday lives, in our national economy, in our workforce, right? We have over 12 million workers. We've seen the largest wealth creation being built by the tech sector. Specifically, just if we all look at back in the 2020, right, when we saw all those decreases in wealth challenges, we saw some of the top 7 companies add on over $3 trillion in their own values, right? And as we think about how much we rely on our social media for communication, information, more than 70% of adults are using it, and especially looking at our teens, where they're getting their information. And so the levels of importance of technology and how ubiquitous has become in our everyday lives, whether you're working in K-12 education or working in programs that are creating new pathways into employment that has some level of tech, looking at your own organizations and the tech companies and themselves, how they're developing, all the way to who gets to fund all these new innovations, but also who are the funders of those other funds that invest in all of that. So at the foundation, we have a really interesting strategy, right, that looks at across all these different spaces. And so based on that, we're able to fund at a lot of different stages. We look at things that are specifically removing barriers, right? We've done a lot of research. If you all are familiar, we have the Leaky Tech Pipeline that looks at all the different systemic barriers across that ecosystem. And so we specifically are focused on those four areas that I mentioned. And things that we fund could be research, could be partnerships, could be programs at different levels. Now we've launched our tech policy, which is specifically nine policy issues. We did over $5 million to 12 different organizations in different areas. One of them was, New Media Ventures is also here. So we fund different types of organizations wherever it's needed. And I think that's the power of philanthropy and our type of organizations that I hope we get to use the models with urgency and applying them into the areas that are most needed.
Thank you so much. I feel like that gave us a charge for the conversation too. So speaking of areas most needed, I think the first step, right, in like the pipeline of funding and finding an idea is really identifying what you're going to fund. You spoke to the broad areas that you all fund and types of organizations, but kind of want to dive in a little bit. What does that criteria process look like? And also, I think if each of you spoke to how that has already started to evolve, either in the social movements that are taking place, as well as things like the pandemic and what 2020 brought. So I'll pass that question to Ev first. If you can speak to both the criteria and then also how that has evolved.
Yeah, such a good question, criteria. And it's hard with NMV because we fund so much, right? Like we're interested in all sorts of organizations that are building progressive power. So we fund organizers on the ground who are, getting folks to turn out to vote. We fund media projects and podcasts. We fund all sorts of stuff. So criteria, I mean, the first thing I should say is I'm pretty new to this job in this world too, right? So in Los Angeles, I've been on a couple of volunteer committees for LA 2050 and Social Justice Partners LA, which are a couple orgs that do grant making in LA. But I've only been in this role as like a job, sort of giving away money for a year. And the prior, 15 plus years of my career was spent on the other side, right? Like working with nonprofits, asking for money, fundraising. And so, so I think in terms of criteria, like it's still developing for me. I've inherited a lot through NMV, but it's also really important to approach this work, I think, with humility, especially for me being new to it, understanding the other side. But we all sort of bring in biases to this work. And so I think it's really important to just have an awareness around those and try to work against them. So, something we do as part of our processes is set up dashboards to see what sort of applications we're getting, make sure we're getting groups that are representing diverse backgrounds and states and all kinds of other stuff. And so, so what was the other thing? It was criteria and something else.
I think you spoke to it, but just biases
Cool.
and how that, yeah.
Yeah. I'll pass it on.
Dashboard.
Yeah.
Anita, if you want to pick up and speak to this too.
Sure. I come from a private family foundation background. So it's a little bit different because obviously we're very hands-on in who we're donating to, giving money to. I think in terms of criteria, what I'm sort of looking for always is an organization that we can truly partner with. Like for us as a family foundation, that's something that's really important because I feel like when we're able to partner with the nonprofit, especially if it's a grassroots organization and we're involved in the seed funding, it's like any other investment. So I always say that philanthropy shouldn't be treated any differently than if you were to invest in a startup company, right? And everybody is different in how they may be involved in a startup or not be involved. And it's the same thing, I think, with giving. And so for us, I'm always looking for partners that we can be involved with. So, I don't want just the organization to be doing the work. I also want to be assisting the organization and making sure even just the messaging that we're putting out is consistent. And also, again, if we're talking about sort of like the startup world, if you're investing in a company, typically you have some level of expertise that you're bringing to the table, and you want to have this sort of organization that's starting out to gain from your expertise, ideally. So again, I think that's why the partnership, at least for me, is really important. And I think it, based on my experience, I feel like we're able to make a larger impact that way, versus if we were just giving the organization a check and saying good luck and send us a report in 3 months. So for me, I think that's really the key, and how it's evolved, because I think during COVID, for example, we had so many organizations that were scrambling, right, to serve their populations, to serve their clients. And so it really was that partnership that sort of helped, because they could call me and say, here's what we really need. This is the need in our community right now. And we were able to respond very quickly and create, sort of put our money into sort of projects or whatever you will, that really made a difference, because that's what the organization was saying their clients needed. So yeah, I'm going to end there.
No, I mean, that's really beautiful. And I can also attest to that partnership because I have quarterly check-in calls with Anita where I'm like, you're definitely my cheerleader and also ready to support with whatever challenge or just exciting thing we're also bringing to the table. Also just love that both of you emphasize listening to organizations and that being the conduit for learning then what the criteria should be. And that is a wonderful feedback loop.
And if I could, sorry, just one more thing I know, is, and everyone has sort of said it, and I think we're all basically on the same page, which is looking at organizations who are really looking to make systemic changes rather than sort of surface level changes. And again, there's a lot of great organizations out there who are doing a lot of different things, but for us, I think, and I think the way to really move the needle is partnering with those organizations that are really looking at root causes of issues. So I'll end with that.
Yeah, no, and I think that also is a great segue. Kind of the conversation around partnership and support is our next question. And from our poll, it looks like that's something folks are really excited to hear about. So the next question is sort of post initial investment decision. What does that journey of support and partnership look like? What is the transformation that comes from that support that's offered? So I'll pass it to Lili first, and then Amina, if you want to add.
Sure, definitely. I think on our end, just to provide a little bit of the framework, right, of especially on the area that I'm zoned in, which is looking at the intersection of racial justice, technology, and now policy. And to the point that was brought up earlier by Anita, like this, what does that look like at a systems level? But ultimately, it has to be informed from the grassroots level, right? Because it's especially in tech, we know that despite all this wealth being created, Black, Latinx, Indigenous communities are super underrepresented compared to their population, yet we're the ones that are disproportionately impacted the most, right? Whether it's the types of jobs that are being automated, the types of impacts that those technologies have in our local communities, the lack of opportunity to even be able to enter these higher earning waning jobs where to keep up with the level of cost of living, like you have to be in a tech sector now, which is limiting, right? And so we've seen a lot of the challenges there. And so we take a look at it at three main things specifically. One is, how do we build awareness that we need to be part of this conversation? We just launched our initiative with Consumer Report that's taking a look at the bias in algorithms that we use in everyday technology, but also in everyday things that we need. And that a lot of people aren't able to get equitables, which is like fair mortgage loans, fair access, like equitable healthcare, just also who gets tracked in surveillance more, right? And so we're talking about our data privacy that a lot of these sectors are monetizing. And so how do we build awareness? How do we get our community involved? So we got to work directly with organizations on the ground to basically be able to listen to them. And I reflect upon this specific awareness side because during the pandemic, when we saw a lot of and during the elections as well, right? We saw a lot of the grassroots organizers, even though we don't do civic engagement grants per se, a lot of the folks on the ground had to become digitally equipped. And if you didn't have the connectivity, you didn't have the right tools inside your organization or the digital marketing, we were at a point where we had the digital skills divide, right? And how do we close that? But how do we build awareness is really the part there. And the second strategy is looking at building infrastructure. And I think this is the part that's really important on the types of funding we want to provide. We tend to give as much as we can in an investment and not necessarily as charity, right? So I think this is, especially in this room, is really critical to think ourselves as investors. The way Anita was mentioning just right now, of like when you invest in a tech company, what is the problem, the solution, how many people, but also how are they building their own organization? I think it's super critical to make sure that there's that infrastructure and also being able to support those organizations to collaborate with each other. Specifically in our policy center work that we funded last year, about 12 different organizations, we wanted them to start to work together. And so we're looking at how do we integrate and continue to provide that support. The last part is driving collective advocacy action. And so here's where, for example, we funded Day One Accelerator Project, which is part of the Federation of American Scientists, to specifically create an accelerator and incubator program for talent that looks like the communities are being impacted by these issues, and equipping them with the tools and resources to now be the ones that are drafting actionable memos that go straight to our agencies, straight to our elected officials. So all those three things, I think, are examples of our framework and the different touch points. But really, at the end, we want to make sure that we're, as funders, being as explicit with providing them the support and then getting out of the way, and making sure that we're also looking at more multi-year investments and not just once in a year, right? So that's why I brought up the infrastructure aspect, having more of that, larger amounts spread out over years rather than once in a time and then you get out, because it's also unfair for these organizations in these times to be able to build sustainably as well.
I'm like snapping, clapping, hearting, like plus signing everything you're saying. I think we're all like vigorously nodding. But I mean, I want to pass it to you to expand on the support that New Profit offers.
Yeah, and Lili, we're so aligned. I think just to your point, Amrita, we're all very like values aligned here. And I was, it's just funny because I was about to say, like, you know, the 3 or 4 things that we always think about are unrestricted funding, and either multi-year funding through us, or we think about how do we set organizations up for becoming ready for multi-year funding. So we think a lot about that, and we think about unrestricted funding as really critical, both because of exactly what you said, Lili, the sustainability it affords organizations. We would never question in the for-profit sector organizations needing that growth capital, you know, to build what they need to be sustainable, and also to do the R&D they need to be on the leading edge. So there's no reason for us to not offer that to in the social sector. And then we believe that unrestricted capital is also the first entry point to a stance that we hold around trust. We trust you to do what you think is best with the resources, because you are the experts in your communities and in what is needed for your organization. So we find that really important. And then for us as a capacity builder, we hone in a lot on strategic advising and leadership coaching. And it's really about offering our organizations that pattern recognition about like looking around the corner on what might break next, or what might be that next, you know, opportunity or challenge, and how do you prepare yourself and your senior teams for that. And then there's a fair amount of just being a soundboard and a leadership coach for entrepreneurs around how do you deal with, just navigate with the incredible growth that you are leading. How do you go from a founder to a manager of an organization to a leader of leaders, and all of that kind of journey. And then we think peer connections are critical, and Lili spoke to that. So it can be very lonely to be a CEO of an early stage organization, or any organization, frankly. And so it's really critical to have that network and support of peers who are going through some of the things that you are doing. Some maybe are navigating it better than you are. Some have needs that you can support, and it just becomes really critical. And then to that, going back full circle to the funding piece, access to access to others and to networks. And when we think about our support, we're really paying attention to those internal capabilities over the course of our investments, and helping organizations think about, how are you building your leadership beyond any one individual? For example, what are you doing? How are you leveraging your board? How are you building your senior teams? Are you kind of continuing to build those feedback loops to the communities that you serve, so that you are sharpening your theory of change at any given moment, and understanding what you are pursuing in the world and what you've learned from your last iteration? We're thinking about, do you have a reliable and repeatable economic model? How do we help you think about what are the different sources that you can be tapping into, and what that looks like? And then finally, do you have a clear strategy that is kind of offering you that North Star that helps you figure out how you approach new opportunities, but isn't, that thing that's like collecting dust on the shelf and everyone spent 6 months of their lives to do, but isn't actually actionable. So what does that strategy look like? What is it living that strategy look like over time? So we focus a lot on those kind of internal capabilities that hopefully set organizations up for sustainable impact over time.
I think if I can just add to Amina, one of the other parts of like, how are we also as funders introducing them to other funders? And I know that this is a space where there's a lot of us in this industry, right? And we have a lot of privilege being in this space. And I know that a lot of you are centering on that of how do we mobilize it in a way that we're also getting to decisions faster. So I've gotten a lot of feedback from some of the organizations that we were sometimes their first funders, and being able to work with us and leverage the name and the brand helped them. But it was also the fact that we were getting feedback that other funders were taking really long and asking way too much information than for that stage that the organization is at. So I think that we also should be checking in, like, how much information is really needed and enough, and how do we also adapt a little bit more of the startup mentality into understanding the different cycles of the organization and seeing it from philanthropy to investment, right? So I think that us as funders, we have a lot of opportunity and power, and our community really, really needs it. But treating them as the talent that they are and the leaders that they are as investments is really critical.
I think that leads us really well to our last kind of official question around impact. And I think sometimes folks struggle to look at venture capital and angel investing, et cetera, the same as investing in nonprofits, because the ROI is different on that investment, right? So how do we help think about what impact looks like, what measuring it looks like, as well as like moving into that growth stage and I think sustainability. And so on that note, I'll pass it to Ev first, because I know sustainability is a really important part of your model.
Yeah, thanks. And I just want to say one last thing on that, how we support founders too, because I think it's so important. And Lili was just touching on it in terms of connections and stuff like that. I was talking to a friend at the Roddenberry Foundation a couple of weeks ago, and she said something, relationships and networks are the most revolutionary force that we have. And I was like, yeah, that's so true. And especially in this era of AI where Chat GPT can do so many things already, and it's only going to keep growing. Like if you need to write a grant application, just use Chat GPT. It's going to do a great first draft of it. But what that can't replace is the relationships and the networks. And that's how we're really going to change this country. And so I think making connections with other funders, other founders, all that stuff is so important for us too. And it leads into impact too, because I think so much of that impact is about what collective impact we're having on the systems that we're working in, right? How we're sort of changing communities, and you can't do that as an individual or as an organization. So one thing we look at is, who else the organization is working with, who they're partnering with, how they work within that broader ecosystem, especially around systems change. And for us, it really depends the impact, and we really, like Lili and Amina were saying, we really try to trust our founders and the folks we're investing in. So they tell us what impact they're trying to have and how they're measuring it. And that's really good enough for us. We have our own sort of internal metrics at NMV, how we're measuring our broader impact. But what that means is it's just different for different organizations. So some organizations in our portfolio, they're trying to flip state legislatures, right? So groups like Sister District or Climate Cabinet are trying to get progressive folks into state legislatures and flip those in specific states. So that's a really clear metric that they've been tracking and that they're working towards. Others, there's one, Project ID Action Fund is trying to get folks IDs so they can vote, but also have access to housing and healthcare and all kinds of other stuff. And they're also trying to change laws to make that easier and sort of push back against all of this voter suppression. So they have specific policies they're advocating for in different states, including California. And so that's something easy to track. And the last thing I'll say on it is because a lot of our work focuses on media and narrative change, that stuff can be harder to measure, but it's really, really important to us. And yeah, I don't have a great answer on how we measure that. I think that's deeper, longer term work. But for example, one of the groups we funded recently is called Block Media. They're the C4 media arm of the Justice Democrats, which is the group that recruited and ran AOC and Cori Bush and Jamal Bowman and a bunch of super progressive folks. They have a podcast that they just expanded and started doing bi-weekly. And one of their episodes a couple of weeks ago was about how progressives can communicate better on cable news in these debates, right? It's sort of a very specific area of the public debate and narrative. And traditionally progressives haven't been great on that. I haven't seen anyone else do a podcast. And it was, sort of Waleed Shahid, who had been the comm strategist for AOC, and Bernie and others, was leading this sort of discussion and panel about how progressives can be better on that. And so things like that, I think, are really important. It's a little harder to measure the impact, but we love that work as well.
Yeah, all of that resonates with me. And it sounds like everyone spoke to systemic impact and systemic change in like what you're looking to fund. So I'll pass it to Amina, but then I think Anita and Lili like chime in with how you're thinking about impact, scaling, sustainability.
Yeah, I'm happy to jump in, Amrita. And there's so much that Ev said that's just like buzzing in my head and like really resonating around the different model. Like it's what you're saying, Amrita. As we invest in organizations that are much more about systems change, we've had to kind of really go on a journey with some of our, we're an intermediary, so we fundraise every dollar that we give out. So we've had to really go on a journey of kind of engaging with and partnering with our funders to say, there are places where like attribution would be irresponsible for us to even try to get. Like we are in the business of how are we contributing, not, you know, what are we directly. So just there's a whole kind of world around how do we hold ourselves accountable to and educate peer funders around how performance measurement has been used, and data practices have really been used, I think, to kind of maintain inequitable and oppressive systems and really, you know, actually bias against certain kinds of organizations. And so I keep saying, you know, at New Profit, we think so deeply about proximity as a critical lever for driving meaningful and sustainable impact. And so, you know, that's where we start. We start by investing in organizations that we know that have that proximity, and then we build that proximity to them, to kind of the earlier point of that you were making about relationships and trust, and someone put that in the chat. So we build that so that's how we start like developing an understanding of the progress our organizations are doing, is doing it through that proximity and kind of in those deep qualitative ways. And similar to what Ev was saying, we start with, you know, you are the experts in what you do. And so we will bring sort of a set of questions, Socratic method around, are you thinking about this? You know, here are some things that we've seen, but it's really about what are you trying to achieve and what are you trying to learn, and how do we support you thinking about how do we go about finding that out, and do you have those feedback loops? And so that's kind of how we think about, are you tracking your impact and what matters to you? What else here? And then I'll say that for us internally, again, like I'll go back to, we're thinking about what impact are you having out in the world? So are you continuing to drive value for your stakeholders, for your communities? What feedback are you getting through your proximity to them about that? And then are you building your sustainability? So that's something that we, as I said, pay attention, and we have our own kind of internal proprietary tool that we will do with our organizations around, like, what are you seeing relative to, again, your leadership, your strategy, your economic model, and all of that. And then finally, we hold a mirror to ourselves, and it's really important to us when we think about the impact of our investments on what did we learn and what value did we add. And we hope that it becomes kind of a feedback loop into how we support more organizations in the future. What are we learning? How should we be tweaking what we're doing to support organizations?
Thank you so much. Oh, Anita, yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, no, I mean, honestly, everybody is saying everything so eloquently and so perfectly. And when we, for all the attendees, you know, we did a prep sort of call a week ago, and none of us have met, but we were all just aligned and on the same page, which is fantastic. So to be honest, I don't want to talk just to talk, which is surprising because I do love to talk. But honestly, everybody has said, you know, what, again, as a private family foundation, these are all sort of the points that I would have made as well. You know, and these are all things that were touched on throughout the session. But, you know, again, looking at unrestricted grants, and when we talk about measuring, Ev and Amina have said it perfectly. One, you look to the organization because they're your partner, and you're putting your trust in them. And that's what the unrestricted funding says. is we trust you, and we're going to let you use this funding to where it works best for you, for whether it's a 3-month period or a year-long period, or again, 5 years down the line. And so having very strict measurement guidelines can be tricky, because again, as a funder, and if you're seed funding, and you're sort of saying, well, you must report these outcomes to me, that can be very limiting to the organization. And it also may not actually get you the real data that you're looking for. So when you're looking for systemic changes, not everything can be quantified in sort of, well, we served 10 clients this month. And while that's relevant data, there should be obviously a much deeper dive into those 10 clients served. Each client is an individual, and what is a pattern and what have we learned? So the reporting, typically, if you really want to measure impact, in my opinion, the reporting usually has to be pretty robust. And I don't know that we have a perfect answer for even what that would look like, right? So I think that in all cases, you definitely want to have some level of measurement system. But again, as a funder partnering with that organization, it's really looking to them to say, here's how we're going to measure our success. And when you're seed funding, that success it may not be pretty, it may not be social media worthy. It may be that a report was created, money went into data collection, right? And the value of that data collection is difficult to measure, but that data collection, the information you get from that supports everything you do, supports your strategy, supports everything. So if you just think of it as an investment, yes, you may not be able to say, hey, we served 10 clients with this survey. However, I would say you're now creating, again, a foundational framework, as well as using, to me, education is the key to everything. So when you're doing a survey, for example, you're getting materials that you can now take and educate others with. And that impact is difficult to measure, right? So yeah, just, I don't know if I said anything different, but, I concur with everything that my colleagues are saying. And I'm sure Lily's going to have something amazing to say as well. So
I was just going to briefly say also just being mindful, right, of the times that we're in for the different, for us as folks in these different organizations that are also a little bit more independent from some of the market conditions, right? But a lot of these organizations are not. So if you've ever worked in a nonprofit or for-profit yourself, imagine what it's like to fundraise right now and putting yourself in those shoes. And I think understanding the need for being mobile and being adaptive as foundations, whether you need to change some of your criteria or not. Maybe you don't need to collect this information anymore. I think for us, it's always just being mindful of like, are we making these organizations do additional work on top of what they're already doing? And if so, is that worth it? And if we're asking for more, then we should be giving more. So I think that we just have to be mindful of what is it that we're asking. And if we're going to collect all this information, you would better make sure your organization is applying it to apply even more resources. But I just want to be mindful of just the moments that we're in, and like, it's okay to deviate. We came from the pandemic. We're going in another economic uncertainty. A lot of foundations, instead of being more open, are starting to be more conservative in their dollars. They're starting to be a little bit less transparent, right? We've seen some op-eds that are coming around some of the folks that are like, oh, don't criticize the investments that we do, trying to prepare us also for not being able to also have critical conversations about the types of organizations. And the same organizations, just because you're a nonprofit doesn't mean that you're not a business. You still have to be sustainable. And you can have a lot of different models, right? And as foundations, putting our hat as investors, PRIs, multi-year grants, shorter term grants, smaller grants, community, like at Kapor Center, we have a Kapor Good Neighbor group that the community decides what we should be funding in Oakland. And those are things that we explicitly said, nothing related to tech. Let's go fund the community, culture, whatever other things are that we aren't usually doing. But that way we're a full citizen and a full, resident in our own community that's thoughtful about those different areas.
Thank you so much. I feel completely mesmerized. I was going to say a closing remark, and now I'm just absorbed by what you said, Lili. And I think I'm just going to close this out for the sake of time. I think what all of you are saying is that this idea of being bolder extends through that whole journey. We have to rethink giving, who we're giving to, rethink supporting and what support looks like, and then also rethink the impact piece and be like, maybe what we're also saying here is that's a conversation that is going to continue to unfold. And I would love to see conversations like this happen across funders with, organizations like our own and other orgs that are on the other end of it. Continue to sort of figure that out together, because I really enjoyed hearing even what you're navigating and struggling with. And I think having those transparent two-way dialogues is really wonderful. So thank you, each of you. If you want to drop final insights in the chat, if you also want to drop your contact info, but I also know each of us are on the Summit platform, so you can reach out to us that way. And thank you everyone for joining us. I'm going to pass it back to the Philanthropy Together team.
Amazing. Thank you again. Hello, it's Kaisen. Just incredible words of wisdom to close out our session. Amrita, Amina, Lili, Anita, and Ev, thank you again. And to all our We Give Summit speakers, thank you for being here, for contributing your bold ideas. And then for everyone, you can find a copy of these recordings as well as this session in your agenda in the next few days. But before I wrap up and pass it off to Sada for some final remarks, we do have our raffle winner, which is, drumroll, Lili. Yay, congratulations. You'll be getting the book of your choice. So thanks for sticking with us and being a part of We Give Summit. So Sada, I'll let you take over from here.
Thank you so much, Kaison, and thank you so much for our amazing panelists. On behalf of Philanthropy Together and the We Give Summit Planning Committee, I would like to thank all of you, all of our amazing speakers and entertainers and performers across these past 3 days. My God, it went so fast. And all of our sponsors for making this event possible. We had nearly 1,200 people, registering for We Give Summit from across 33 countries, 96 speakers, and literally thousands and thousands of chats and insights and new ideas from all the wisdom that was shared by everybody. So all of this content will be up on wegivsummit.org by early next week. So if you missed a session, don't worry about it. We encourage you to share this content far and wide with your network. I mean, so many good nuggets of information. So the collective giving movement will be stronger the more these lessons are shared. So what we learned, we heard themes about why our work of collective systems change through philanthropy is so important. Alistair from Native Voices Rising shared how the system of philanthropy is made for grassroots organizations not to exist. So we need to change that. And Angela Vo from Emergent Fund spoke of reparations in philanthropy, saying, we're here to bring money home. And Melissa Walker from the States Project shared, we are in this for the fight. We're fighting for democracy. We're fighting for people. There is not an option to sit down for that fight. And then Chanel from Samuel SFL's fund said, no idea is too big. No giving initiative is too small. If it matters to you, it matters. So think about all of this, all the notes that you wrote down in your notebooks during these 3 days, my God, 3 weeks. And to get to that why, solidarity, love, and hope were a clear thread throughout the sessions. Gloria opened us up in the keynote on Tuesday with a call for all of us to demonstrate what solidarity in philanthropy looks like. You don't have to be a millionaire to show up and support. We all know that. Give what you're able to give to your community and continue to be generous. Tiffany from Echoing Green had a call to action for our communities. Love the people that you fund. Love the people that you work for. And Tracy Green Washington from CoThink said the perfect summary. At the end of the day, this is about love, joy, and deep relationships. And of course, Glide serenading us at the beginning of this session with love is the answer. So our team will continue to sit with the nuggets and insights from all these chats and welcome your input on what sessions and ideas really resonated with you. Please complete our full WeGive Summit evaluation form in Whova. You're going to see it on the community part of it. You should have just received an announcement, and we will also send a link via email in the coming days. So please, please, please let us know your thoughts. And before you sign off, there are 3 very important next steps. First, and very easy to do, reach out and connect with someone you met this week, either doing speed networking or in the Zoom chat or on Whova, in the community board. Let's keep building these relationships with one another. We also want to tell the story of every collective giving group here at WeGive Summit. So please, we really encourage you, everyone, every single member of your collective giving group who is part of this, movement and your group to complete the US 2023 Collective Giving Landscape Research Survey. There is one for groups and one for individual members. We currently do not yet have representative data for Black, Latinx, Native, API, LGBTQ, Jewish, and Muslim circles. And we want to be able to further break down the data by these identities. So we encourage you to tell your story. We know how diverse and how dynamic our movement is. So please raise your voice, fill out the survey. And then the third step, the community doesn't stop here. So please join our LinkedIn group for the Collective Giving Movement. Go sign up for that right now. Share your insights from WeGive Summit with others. I want to give now the big thank yous, and I'm going to raise my WeGive Summit glass from 2 years ago. So I want to give a big thank you to the WeGive Summit Steering Planning Committee for helping to craft this year's powerful agenda. You did an incredible job. Thank you to the Reven team for their amazing support. Thank you, Jordan, Tony, Julie. And the learning does not have to stop here, right? For all of us. And a huge thanks. And I hope all of you can come on camera. You won't be able to come on camera, right? Oh my God. Okay, I want to give a huge thanks to the Philanthropy Together team. Isis, Ilyasa, Ty, Kyson, Kelsey, Sarah, Rebecca, Ileana, and especially to Melissa and Maya for leading with thoughtfulness, incredible attention to detail, and offering kindness and calm during this whole process. Thank you, team. I mean, I wake up every day feeling extremely grateful and lucky to be working with all of you. So I encourage you to raise your glass. It's 4 o'clock in the West Coast, so it's time for a bubbly right now. Raise your glass to a global collective giving movement that is truly transformational. A movement that is really breaking power dynamics, that is moving money into our communities fast, and that is creating deep and long-lasting relationships, and that is rooted in love and in joy. Thank you, everyone. Cheers.